the idyllic villages that cling to our coastline. Known for their beauty and serenity.
Oh, it's wonderful to see that sailor.
Now destinations for our leisure. But once they played a vital role in our history.
This is amazing. I'm Ben Robinson, and as an archaeologist, I'm intrigued by our coastal villages because there's always a bigger story behind that idyllic postcard image.
I've come to Ravenglass on England's northwest coast, 42 miles south of Carlisle. This small village sits within the Lake District's picturesque national park. Today it's a sleepy coastal retreat, but we'll discover how the tiny village of Ravenglass was once a cornerstone of the mighty Roman Empire.
Ravenglass played an incredibly important role in trying to subdue the whole of Britain into the Roman ambition.
A place where even today, Roman remains still reveal themselves.
Ooh, this is the business.
And the treasures of the past continue to turn up in the most unusual places.
The gardeners were repairing a drain, and they came to us and said, "Do you want to see the writing before we throw it out?"
There's a fascinating story to this village by the sea.
I'm approaching Ravenglass aboard a small fishing boat, the Ven Ellie. There aren't many natural harbours like this on this stretch of coast. This is something special. My skipper is Murray Wilson, who's been sailing these waters for over 30 years.
Even though it's a lovely day, I can see you're concentrating on the landmarks, you're concentrating on where the water is.
That's right. It can blow up in here, but one of the joys is coming in and looking at Ravenglass. On a fine day, you can look right up the valleys. You see Scafell, the highest mountain in England. It's absolutely gorgeous. So what the early mariners used to think of coming into here, it must have been, wow, and then straight to the pub.
Let's go straight to the pub.
Yeah.
This is an incredible strategic location. There are no better harbours on this stretch of Cumbrian coast. You've got Scotland up there, Hadrian's Wall, the northern frontier of the Roman Empire. And this place was of enormous importance to the Romans. I'm going to find out why. I'm walking down the main street here, and look how tightly packed the houses are. They're terraces of houses, all of different dates. They've been rebuilt and built again over time. Look at this. These windows, now, they're not all original, and some of them didn't even start life as windows, I don't think, because here you can see what looks like a joint in the masonry running right down to ground level. So it looks like that was a door. You don't have two doors that close together, so possibly the original door. There's a story in here.
Hi, Ben.
The owner is David Ashton, who's recently refurbished this beautiful period property. Oh, lovely old beams, fantastic. There's one running across the length of the room here. Oh, and another one here. But this is interesting, because it's chamfered, so you don't bump your head on the corner, but it's also chamfered on this side, which you don't need. So either this was a bigger room that extended towards next door, or they've found a good old bit of timber and put it here.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
And you've got a lovely old fireplace here as well.
Yeah. We've found a couple of things on the side of the fireplace which you might like to see.
Bits and pieces you found.
Yeah, the bigger piece came from out of the wall.
Oh, out of the wall.
Yeah, it was a bit of infill,
Okay.
as far as I could tell.
Well, it looks like you've got 18th century stuff, bits of tableware, another bit of jug here. This is all 18th, 19th century.
Yes, that makes sense, yes.
But this, that's Roman pottery.
Really?
That came from here.
Yes, that was probably found beneath a concrete plinth that had been built to house a kitchen in the 1960s.
It's a big Roman jug or jar.
Wow. Something I didn't expect you to say.
The thing about this is, when you find Roman pottery on fields, it's all eroded and softened. And the same if you find it on the beach, the water's worn it away. But these, you see, it's kind of fresh. It looks freshly broken. This hasn't come far from where it was dropped and smashed in Roman times.
Wow.
Some Roman dropped and smashed a pot here, and it's just lain here ever since. And if they were doing that, there were Romans on this site.
I couldn't have hoped for anything better coming out of the ground than that, could I?
You've got to keep your eyes open. There might be more of this kicking around. This is a fascinating village. Just behind me here, this old barn. Look at the wonderful mix of material in the wall here. There's the granite, and some of those sandstone blocks, those pinkish, reddish blocks, look like they could have come from the Romans.
The legacy of the Romans who once lived here is in the very fabric of this place.
By around 100 AD, the Roman army had conquered northern Britain, and Ravenglass, with its natural harbour on the northwest coast, was ideally situated to play a part in Rome's grand strategy for control of Britain. Just up the coast there, a really big statement of Roman control, the most famous defensive measure in the world, arguably, Hadrian's Wall.
Roman Emperor Hadrian visited the northern frontier of his empire in 122 AD, and the construction of the wall was completed not long after.
We may be 40-odd miles from Hadrian's Wall here, but Ravenglass played a crucial role in the protection of the northwest frontier of the Roman Empire, keeping troublesome, unconquered Scotland away from Romanised Britain.
With direct access to the Irish Sea, Ravenglass's harbour was perfect for transporting crucial supplies into northern England. And to protect it, they built a fort.
I'm on the site of the Roman fort at Ravenglass, and although time has taken its toll, there are still enough features here, earthworks, where I can make out the layout of the fort. And one of the big features is this. This is the ditch that would have surrounded the fort, gone right around the perimeter. And it's silted up over time, but you've got to imagine this, 3, 4, 5 times as deep, a great V-shaped cut into the landscape, quite an obstacle if you're trying to get into the fort. And it was all to protect what was going on in there. Imagine the commandant's house, barrack blocks, storehouses, granaries, parade grounds, everything that's necessary for military life, all going on in there. And the foundations of all this are buried here under the ground, just waiting to be discovered. And there's a train coming. And that's interesting.
Because it was the building of this railway in the 1850s that revealed the remains of the Roman fort.
But I've noticed something else on aerial views. The fort carries on towards the sea, the other side of the rail tracks, and it looks like it's eroding into the sea.
This LiDAR image taken with lasers shows things we can't easily see with the naked eye. It reveals the fort's original outline with the railway line slicing through it. So I'm going to take a look, and hopefully there'll be something interesting to see down on the coastline.
The first thing I've noticed is this band of pebbles here, very different to the soil underneath and the soil on top. And the thing is, the more I look, I can see this band, yes, it extends up the side of the hill here. So I can follow it all the way up here. Ooh, this almost looks cemented or mortared together. So this does imply that it's been made by people. It could be part of a structure. Something else caught my eye just up here. Just happened to glance up and see above the pebbly layer this. This is the business. Look, there's bits of charcoal in it. There's bits of animal bone in it. There's bits of ceramic in it. All the detritus from fires, cooking. And I'm just looking because it's in these sort of places where I might just yes, there we go. A little bit of Roman pottery. It's a rim, definitely Roman, and this would have been a bowl or a jar. Think of the meals that would have been cooked in that in Roman times. Perhaps some soldier has smashed it and it's ended up here in this debris. I know it doesn't look much, but this is the stuff of Roman life. What it also conveys is that this place was built very, very close to the sea. It's all about what's going on out there.
Dr. Mai Musie is an expert on Roman history who studied the development and reach of the Roman Empire.
May, the Romans have invested a lot of effort here. What part did this area play in the grand strategy of empire?
Well, having these strategic forts along the coastal paths were part of a bigger imperialistic policy to subdue the whole of Britain into the Roman ambition.
So it's almost like the west frontier of the empire.
Absolutely, and a place like Ravenglass playing an incredibly important role in trying to protect what you've already conquered. It's very strategic, it's got the harbour, it was easier to move soldiers via the sea, it was easier to trade with the Mediterranean, and it became this really big settlement for Roman soldiers.
Now that's an important point because they need to be fed. They need locals providing various services for them, like any garrison town today.
And we see this across Britain, where you would have forts and fortresses. You would also have settlements developing from there, so like villages or small towns, and intermingling of Roman soldiers with the local population, particularly in this area, northern England. And that's quite important to understand, that actually there was a number of Romans who stayed here because they had cultural, economic ties.
One building in particular played a key role in Roman life here at Ravenglass.
Much of the evidence for the Romans in Britain is buried underground, and you have to have an archaeological excavation to get to it, or get lucky and find it in the side of an eroding cliff. But here is something absolutely spectacular. Standing Roman ruins, a large part of a very large Roman building. This is one of the best survivals of a Roman military bathhouse anywhere in Britain. It's staggering to find this kind of archaeology above ground. I mean, you can see the great sandstone blocks here that they've used, and you can see the cement, the mortar here that bound it all together. It's just extraordinary the way that this structure survives. And around here, My goodness, I'm entering a room here. Oh, and look at this. This is an incredible survival. It's a niche. You can see there the top of the arch, and there would have been a platform here. And imagine a deity, a god. It's astounding. And the more I look around, the more I can see there's still original plaster adhering to the walls.
A lot of this structure would have been removed and reused as building materials by later inhabitants of Ravenglass. But in its day, this bathhouse was a very impressive piece of Roman architecture.
Bathing was a sort of ritual, really. There was a series of rooms. There was a cold plunge pool where you get dipped in and really shock the senses. There would have been a warm room, a tepidarium, where it's just nice to relax. Maybe a sweating room, a bit like a sauna. And then a warm bath as well. And all this was about cleansing the body, but it was a social experience as well. It was a really, really important part of Roman military life and also civilian life.
The Romans occupied Ravenglass for around 280 years. With the ultimate decline of the empire, not all of the soldiers would have returned to Rome. Many probably decided to make Ravenglass their home.
We don't know how long people kept on living in the Roman village when the military garrison was abandoned. It all becomes a bit mysterious, the Dark Ages. But what we do know is that life would have carried on, and this would have been an attractive place to live, with its harbour and access to the sea. Now, there would have been ups and downs, there would have been traumas, Viking raids, but eventually the Ravenglass we see today was established.
The later village of Ravenglass grew up around the shoreline, and its buildings tell us what life was like long after Roman occupation had ended.
This is really, really curious. This is what I thought from the boat. It doesn't look like a typical harbour setup. Some of these should have quays or waterfronts. It's the backs of the houses, not the fronts. But there's something interesting. These aren't straight rows of houses, they're bowed on either side. So the main street broadens in the middle and then tapers towards a narrow entrance at either end. This is a typical medieval market centre layout. Imagine sheep, cattle, horses being driven down from the fells, the dales, from Scotland, brought over from Ireland, Wales, England, all meeting at this point to buy and sell. That also explains the narrow entrance to this marketplace. You can control access because you pay tolls. You can allow in who you want to allow in, keep out who you want to keep out. Everything happened in this area. It was a very noisy, exciting place, a place of trade, a place of commerce, not dissimilar to the Roman village up near the garrison. And here we go. Inset into the road is a memorial to the market cross that stood here from medieval times. And every market centre had to have a market cross somewhere right in the centre of the community. It's where proclamations would have been read out, where the market would have been administered from, where jurisdiction was handed out, legal formalities, anything that the people needed to know about, they would gather at the cross. And it also commemorates King John's Charter of 1208. King John, to raise money, would give places a charter to have borough status to become mini towns, the right to hold a fair, a market. It all meant income, not just for King John, but for the people themselves. The houses faced inward to the centre of the village rather than towards the sea, because all of village life was conducted here, and it was the focus of medieval Ravenglass. And this is one house that would have been very much in the middle of the action.
This is the original wall.
Interesting mix of stone in here. And look, I reckon you've got a bit of Roman tile in here.
Good Lord.
It's owned by Malcolm Wrigley, and he has something very special to show me right at the top of his home. Wow, this is fantastic. Look at this timber framing. Unbelievable. But not just any timber framing. These are crook blades.
Right.
Crook blades are early timber framing. This starts off in the medieval period. It's the sort of thing you get in big barns as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe it was one long house with living quarters and the barn and the animal quarters attached, because that's what they did. In the 16th, 17th century, people lived very, very close to their animals.
Yeah.
What did you think when you first exposed these timbers?
I was absolutely fascinated. It just sort of told me that the rest of the house had to be very old as well.
Yeah. You've got something really special here.
We think so.
It's more than likely that the animals kept in Malcolm's house would have ended up being sold in the village market. But there's something else you can't miss while wandering around Ravenglass. There's one name that keeps cropping up again and again throughout the village: Pennington. This is the Pennington Arms, and there's Pennington House down there. And this is the Pennington symbol, the wild cat. The Pennington family can trace their lineage back 800 years to King John's times, and ever since they've played an influential role in village life. And 1 mile from its centre, built on an almost impregnable hillside, is the family seat. This is Muncaster Castle. It's set in extensive parkland and gardens built of this reddish sandstone and pinkish granite. And most of what I can see is 19th century. But here, this is the earliest part of the building that I can see. It's this peel tower. And I can tell it's early because that window up there, right at the top, you see the head of that window? It's heavily eroded. And look at the different stones. That is medieval. And these peel towers are very characteristic of the north, the northwest, because out there was lawless territory. There were bandits, there were cattle rustlers, there were all sorts out there. So you needed to build these defended towers. So you get your family in there, your possessions in there, you lock the doors and hope that trouble will go away. Peter Frost Pennington manages the castle with his wife Iona, who's a direct descendant of the Pennington family. That long association of the Penningtons with this place perhaps makes you want to investigate that history, and I think one of the Penningtons was instrumental in trying to learn about the Roman past here.
You're very correct. The last Lord Muncaster in the 1880s, we understand, certainly financed some of the early excavations here. And the Peel Tower, the oldest part of the castle, is reputedly built on Roman foundations. Now, the jury's still out on that, but it makes sense to me. At the very least, the Romans were walking past here and crossing the rivers, and I'm pretty sure. I mean, the Roman coins been found on the estate, and only a couple of years ago, we found this amazing slab, which is really very important. So now it's pride of place in our collection.
I've got to see that.
Well, come along and I'll show it to you. And you come.
Inside the castle is a treasure trove of Roman artefacts that I hope will provide me with further evidence of how important Ravenglass was to the Romans.
Hello there.
How'd you do?
Very
This is
pleased to meet
my
you.
dear wife, who is the owner and the true Pennington.
And what a room full of treasures you've got here. Incredible, all this Roman history.
It's amazing, isn't it?
But their latest find was almost thrown in a skip.
Centre of the display is the slab we found when the gardeners were repairing a drain, and when they turned it over and found this writing, and they came to us and said, "Do you want to see the writing before we throw it out?" And I said, I think so.
Don't throw anything out.
Amazing. Now, I'm glad you haven't asked me to translate it, because it's a real specialism, because they used a lot of abbreviations and you have to understand the context and what they were driving at, you know. But you have had it translated.
Yeah, I think it was basically the Emperor saying, "Stick with me, guys, or you're in big trouble."
And it mentions a specific unit.
That's
or
right.
A unit with naval origin.
Aelia Classica, sort of the Marines of the Roman world, perhaps, and they were based in the fort.
A coastal fort mentioning naval units, and it's up here used as a drain cover. It's just unbelievable, isn't it? What a window into the past of Ravenglass. I mean, incredible stuff.
And I'm sure there's still lots to find too.
So you're going to keep your eyes open for more stuff just turning up.
Keep looking.
Yeah, yeah.
A find of this nature certainly confirms the status of Ravenglass to the Roman Empire. And when you take stock of all the Roman buildings that once stood here, the fort, the bathhouse, and evidence of numerous others that haven't been excavated yet, you begin to understand the sheer scale of their presence here. Back on the outskirts of the village, I've come across this newly ploughed field that's littered with more proof of Ravenglass's Roman past.
Just looking around on this field, I can see evidence of settlement. There's potsherds, there's fragments of roof tile, and there's been one or two small excavations here that are just beginning to show how extensive this settlement was.
The village today is still offering up these vital clues of what life was like thousands of years ago.
So we can learn more about the Roman past of this place. But this isn't dead, ancient history. The Romans are still very much part of the fabric of this village.